I still remember sitting in the auditorium waiting for Zoe to walk across that stage in her cap and gown. After 2 years of supporting her MBA dream, financially, emotionally, and in every other way possible, I was only weeks away from seeing it all pay off. I had just transferred the final tuition payment that morning, $25,000. The last installment in what had become a very expensive investment in our future together, or so I thought. That same evening, over the dinner I had carefully prepared, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I am leaving you for Liam. He is everything. You are not." The words hit like a truck, but my response surprised even me. I simply said, "Good luck." Before I continue my story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you believe that sometimes losing someone is actually gaining yourself back. And subscribe if you want more real stories about finding strength in unexpected moments. 4 years ago, I met Zoe at a tech conference in Chicago. I was there representing my company, giving a presentation on software integration. She approached me afterward with insightful questions, and I was immediately drawn to her sharp mind and confident smile. At 35, I had built a stable career as a software engineer, with a good salary, a decent apartment in the city, and healthy savings. Dating had taken a back seat to my professional development, so meeting someone who stimulated me intellectually was refreshing. Zoe was 32, working in marketing for a mid-sized company. She was beautiful, ambitious, and frustrated by her career trajectory. Over dinner that first night, she shared her dreams of attending a prestigious business school, climbing the corporate ladder, and eventually starting her own company. "I feel stuck," she admitted, swirling her wine glass. "I have all these ideas, all this potential, but without an MBA from a top school, nobody takes me seriously. The glass ceiling is very real in my industry." We connected instantly, spending the entire weekend together before I flew back home. What followed was 2 months of long-distance calls and video chats before she visited me. Within 6 months, she had found a marketing position in my city and moved in shortly after our 1-year anniversary. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. It was around this time that Zoe began seriously pursuing her MBA dream. She studied relentlessly. For the GMAT, hired an admissions consultant and crafted application essays late into the night. When acceptance letters started arriving, her excitement was contagious. But reality quickly set in when we saw the price tags attached to these prestigious programs. "I could take out loans," she said hesitantly one night, scrolling through financial aid information. "But I would be paying them back for decades." I looked at our finances and made a decision that seemed right at the time. I had been saving for a down payment on a house, but with my steady income and her future earning potential post, MBA supporting her education seemed like a worthwhile investment in our shared future. "Let me help," I offered. "You focus on excelling in the program and I will handle the finances. When you graduate and land that dream job, we can look at houses together." The gratitude and love in her eyes that night made me certain I was making the right choice. We calculated that with my savings and some extra consulting work I could pick up, we could manage the tuition and living expenses without taking on significant debt. It would be tight for 2 years, but the long-term benefits seemed worth the temporary sacrifice. As the program began, our relationship shifted in subtle ways. Zoe was busy with classes, group projects, and networking events. I worked longer hours to boost our income, often coming home to an empty apartment. Weekends that were once filled with hikes, cooking together, and movie marathons became study sessions for her. I rarely complained, understanding the pressure she was under and the investment we were both making. I cut back on everything non-essential. My annual fishing trip with college friends was put on hold. The international vacation we had discussed was indefinitely postponed. Even small luxuries like dining out or attending concerts were reduced to special occasions only. Meanwhile, I continued making tuition payments covering our rent, utilities, groceries, and often her business attire and networking event fees. I even helped pay for a study abroad component that she insisted was crucial for her global business focus. The first year was challenging but manageable. Zoe would occasionally express her appreciation, promising that all our sacrifices would pay off. She would bring home stories from class, excited about the concepts she was learning and the connections she was making. I felt proud watching her grow and evolve, even if I was seeing less of her. The networking in this program is incredible, she would say. I am meeting people who could completely change my career trajectory. Little did I know just how true that statement would prove to be. The changes were subtle at first. Zoe started mentioning a classmate named Liam in her stories about school. He was apparently brilliant in finance class, always had insightful comments in strategy discussions, and had become part of her regular study group. I thought nothing of it initially. It seemed natural she would form friendships with her classmates. Liam suggested this amazing approach to our case study she mentioned over a rare dinner together. His background in Wall Street gives him such a unique perspective. As these mentions became more frequent, I began to form a mental image of Liam based on Zoe's descriptions. He was from a wealthy family with connections throughout the business world. He had worked at a prestigious investment bank before deciding to pursue his MBA. He was confident, articulate, and apparently quite charismatic. Everyone, professors included, seemed impressed by him. Liam got an internship offer from 3 different consulting firms, Zoe said one evening, a hint of admiration in her voice. He did not even have to apply. They reached out to him based on a class presentation. I tried to be supportive, but something about the way she spoke about him made me uncomfortable. Still, I trusted our relationship and focused on the positives. Zoe was clearly thriving in this environment, making connections and building her knowledge base. That was the whole point of this investment, after all. Around the beginning of her 2nd year, I started noticing more concerning changes. Study group sessions ran increasingly late. Texts went unanswered for hours. Weekend study sessions became the norm rather than the exception. When she was home, she was constantly on her phone, smiling at messages but turning the screen away when I walked by. At one point, I noticed she had changed her phone password. Just being more security conscious, she explained when I mentioned it. We had a whole lecture on digital privacy last week. I attempted to discuss the growing distance between us several times, but my concerns were consistently dismissed. You do not understand how intense this program is, she would say, frustration evident in her voice. Everyone is competing for the same jobs, the same opportunities. If I do not put in 110%, what is the point of all this? She had a way of making me feel guilty for asking for more of her time or attention. After all, I was not the one juggling classes, group projects, networking events, and career planning all at once. I was just going to my 9-to-5 job, then coming home to an increasingly empty apartment. The clearest warning sign came about 3 months before her graduation. I had decided to surprise her by showing up at a cafe near campus where she mentioned her study group was meeting. I spotted her immediately through the window, sitting close to a well-dressed man I assumed was Liam. They were not studying. They were leaning toward each other, laughing intimately, his hand resting casually on hers. When I entered, she quickly pulled her hand away, her expression momentarily panicked before she composed herself. "Pat, what are you doing here?" Her voice was higher than normal. "Thought I would surprise you," I said, already feeling like an intruder. "Bring you some coffee for your study session." "That is so sweet," she said, not introducing me to Liam. But we were actually just wrapping up. "I will see you at home later that night." When I asked about what I had seen, she accused me of spying on her and twisting an innocent interaction into something inappropriate. He was comforting me, because I was stressed about an assignment, she insisted. "I cannot believe you do not trust me after everything." I apologized, feeling unreasonable for questioning her. The next day, I transferred another large sum for her upcoming textbooks and a business trip. Despite my doubts, I remained committed to our arrangement. After all, we were so close to the finish line. The day everything fell apart started normally enough. I woke up early, made coffee, and prepared for an important client meeting. Before leaving, I transferred the final tuition payment for Zoe's MBA program, $25,000, that represented the last major financial hurdle before her graduation. I felt a sense of accomplishment knowing we had almost made it through this challenging period. In just a few weeks, Zoe would graduate, hopefully land a high-paying job, and we could finally start building the life we had put on hold. That evening, I left work early to prepare a special dinner. I bought expensive steaks, a bottle of champagne, and even splurged on flowers. I wanted to celebrate this milestone payment and the approaching end of our temporary sacrifices. I set the table with our nicest dishes, dimmed the lights, and waited for Zoe to come home. She arrived nearly 2 hours later than expected. I had texted several times but received only brief responses about a networking event running long. The steaks were cold, the candles burned down, but I tried to maintain a positive attitude. She barely noticed the elaborate setup when she walked in, dropping her bag on the counter and immediately pouring herself a glass of the champagne I had been saving. "Rough day," I asked, reheating her portion of the meal. "Just long," she replied, glancing around as if seeing the dinner preparation for the first time. "Oh, what is all this for?" "I made the final tuition payment today." I explained, trying to recapture the celebratory mood I had planned. "We did it. We are officially in the home stretch." She nodded distractedly, taking a long sip of champagne. "We need to talk." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I set down the plate I was holding and waited. "I am leaving you for Liam," she said, her voice steady and devoid of emotion. "He is everything you are not." The words hung in the air between us. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. Part of me thought this might be a joke, but her expression remained serious, almost clinical. "I have been seeing him for the past 3 months," she continued, as if discussing a business transaction. "It started as just study sessions, but it developed into something more, something real." I found myself oddly calm as I asked, "And when were you planning to tell me this? Before or after I paid your final tuition bill?" She had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable at that. "I was going to wait until after graduation, but Liam thinks I should be honest now. We are making plans to move in together once the program ends." "So today's payment was what exactly?" "A parting gift." She shrugged, and that casual dismissal of everything I had sacrificed finally sparked anger within me. Before I could speak, she continued, "Look, you have been great, Pat. Very supportive and stable. But that is also the problem. You are just a safe option, but I deserve better. Liam is exciting, ambitious, well-connected. He has plans to start his own venture capital firm, and he wants me to be part of it. This is the opportunity of a lifetime." I took a deep breath, processing her words. 2 years of financial support, emotional investment, and personal sacrifices reduced to being the safe option. 2 years of putting my life on hold so she could pursue her dreams, only to be discarded when something more exciting came along. "What about all the money I have spent on your education?" I asked quietly. She smiled as if I had asked a naive question. "Consider it an investment in my future. I will pay you back eventually once I am established." Liam says, with my skills and his connections, I could be making 6 figures within a year. The casual way she referenced Liam's opinions about her future, about our situation, made something snap inside me. Yet, instead of the explosion she clearly expected, I found myself oddly detached, observing the situation with unexpected clarity. "When will you be moving out?" I asked, my voice steady. She blinked, clearly surprised by my calmness. "Well, I thought I would stay until graduation. It is only a few more weeks, and moving now would be disruptive to my studies." I stared at her, finally seeing the person she truly was. "No, you will pack your things and leave tonight." "Tonight? That is ridiculous. Where am I supposed to go?" "To Liam's, I presume. Since he is everything, I am not." Her composure cracked slightly. "He has roommates. We were planning to get our own place after graduation." "Pat, be reasonable. I need somewhere to live while I finish the program." "You should have thought of that before telling me you are leaving me for someone else," I replied. "Good luck with your new life." Her eyes widened as she realized I was serious. "You cannot just throw me out." "What about my tuition payment? The semester has already started." "Not my problem anymore," I said, already reaching for my phone. While Zoe stood watching in disbelief, I calmly made a series of phone calls that would fundamentally alter her immediate future. First, I called my credit card company to cancel the supplementary card I had given her for emergencies and school expenses. Then I logged into my online banking and changed all my passwords, removing her access to the joint account we had set up for household expenses. "What are you doing?" she demanded, panic rising in her voice. "Adjusting my finances to reflect my new single status," I replied, dialing the number for the university's financial services office that I had called so many times before. It was after business hours, but I left a detailed message explaining that I needed to discuss canceling my recent payment due to changed circumstances. I also sent a follow-up email requesting an urgent meeting the next morning. Next, I methodically went through my accounts, changing passwords for Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, and every other subscription service she had been enjoying on my dime. I even called my cell phone provider to remove her line from my family plan, effective immediately. Throughout all this, Zoe's expression transformed from shock to anger to something approaching panic. The reality of her situation was clearly sinking in. "You cannot do this," she said, her voice losing its earlier confidence. "That payment is non-refundable once classes have started. If you pull it now, I will not be able to complete my degree." "That sounds like a conversation you should be having with Liam," I replied. "Since he is so well connected and ambitious, I am sure he can find $25,000 somewhere." I texted a few close friends briefly explaining the situation to get ahead of whatever narrative she might spin. I was not interested in creating drama, but I wanted my support system to understand why I had suddenly gone silent or might need their help in the coming days. As I continued methodically detaching my financial life from hers, Zoe's approach changed. Anger gave way to negotiation. "Pat, I understand you are hurt. That is fair. But let us be adults about this. I can stay in the guest room until graduation. You have already paid the tuition, so pulling it now only hurts me without benefiting you. After graduation, I promise I will pay back every cent." I looked at her, wondering how I had ever been so blind. You cannot break up with someone and expect them to keep paying for your life. That is not how this works. I was going to wait until after graduation to tell you, she admitted. Liam thought honesty was better. "Well, at least one of you has a partial sense of ethics," I replied. Though I notice his ethics did not extend to dating someone else's girlfriend or helping to cover your education costs. Zoe's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me. "Liam is coming to help me pack." "Good. The sooner you are both out of my apartment, the better." When Liam arrived 30 minutes later, I got my first look at the man who had apparently made the last 3 months of my relationship a lie. He was exactly as I had imagined from Zoe's descriptions. Tall, conventionally handsome, dressed in expensive casual clothes that subtly signaled wealth. His confident demeanor faltered slightly when Zoe pulled him aside for a whispered conversation that clearly included the financial implications of her early departure. While they loaded her essential items into his luxury SUV, I heard snippets of their tense conversation. "What do you mean the tuition payment might be canceled?" he asked. "I told you he is trying to get it refunded," Zoe replied, voice strained. "Can you help me cover it if that happens?" Liam's response was too quiet to hear clearly, but his uncomfortable expression said enough. By the time they finished loading her immediate necessities, the dynamic between them had visibly shifted. The confident couple that had arrived was leaving with significantly less certainty. As they prepared to leave, Zoe tried one last appeal. "Pat, please. Just let the tuition payment go through. I worked so hard to get this far." "Yes, we both did," I replied, closing the door as they left. Standing alone in my suddenly empty apartment, surrounded by half-packed boxes and the remains of the celebration dinner I had prepared, I felt an unexpected sense of calm. The shock would come later, I knew, but in that moment the clarity of purpose was almost refreshing. The days following Zoe's departure were a strange mix of emptiness and liberation. I experienced moments of crushing betrayal, lying awake, replaying every conversation looking for signs I had missed. But I also felt an unexpected relief, as if I had been carrying a weight I had not fully recognized until it was gone. The financial implications were significant but manageable. The university initially resisted refunding the tuition payment, citing their policy on non-refundable fees once the semester had begun. However, after a meeting with the financial aid office where I explained the situation, they agreed to a partial refund as an exceptional circumstance. The remaining amount was considerable, but I consoled myself knowing it was the final financial hit I would take from this relationship. The barrage of messages from Zoe began almost immediately. The first were angry, accusing me of pettiness and cruelty. These quickly gave way to increasingly desperate pleas as she confronted the reality of her situation. Please reconsider the tuition payment. My entire future depends on completing this degree. Liam cannot help financially right now because his trust fund payment is not until next quarter. My parents are not answering my calls. I have nowhere else to turn. I read each message but did not respond. Some mutual friends reached out, having heard Zoe's version of events. According to her, I had vindictively pulled financial support without warning, endangering her academic future over a simple relationship issue. A few believed her story and sent disapproving messages. Others reached out more neutrally, seeking my perspective. I learned through these conversations that Liam's enthusiasm had cooled considerably once the financial reality became clear. Apparently, his ambitious plans for their future together had not included supporting her financially through the remainder of her education. According to one friend, Zoe had moved into a classmate's couch temporarily while figuring out her next steps. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I threw myself into work, finding comfort in the structured environment and clear objectives. I started hitting the gym regularly, partly to exhaust myself enough to sleep at night, but also to reclaim some sense of self-improvement. I relearned how to shop and cook for one, a skill I had almost forgotten during our years together. About 2 weeks after Zoe left, her mother called me. She had always been kind, and I had spent several holidays with their family. "Patrick, I do not understand what is happening," she began. "Zoe says you cut her off financially without warning, and now she might not graduate." I explained my side of the story, including the timing of her decision to leave and the plans she had apparently been making with Liam while I was still paying her tuition. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I see," she finally said. "I had a feeling there was more to this story. Zoe has always been selective with information when it serves her purposes." After that conversation, the pressure from her family ceased. I heard through mutual connections that her parents had refused to bail her out, telling her that at 32 she needed to face the consequences of her decisions. Zoe was ultimately forced to take out emergency loans at high interest rates to cover the remainder of her tuition. From what I heard, Liam had provided some initial help, but backed away when the full extent of the financial commitment became clear. His excitement about dating an ambitious MBA candidate apparently did not extend to supporting one through financial difficulties. Through this period, I discovered an unexpected strength in myself. The man who had calmly said good luck instead of begging or arguing was someone I barely recognized but came to respect. Each day that passed without giving in to her requests reinforced my sense of self-worth. I had spent 2 years supporting her dreams at the expense of my own. Now it was time to recalibrate. 6 months after the night Zoe walked out of my life, I found myself in a coffee shop downtown, working on my laptop during a rare day off. I had used some of the money refunded from her tuition to take a 2-week trip to Japan, a country I had always wanted to visit, but had put off when Zoe showed no interest. The trip had been transformative, giving me space to reflect and reconnect with interests I had neglected. I was researching photography equipment, a hobby I had recently rediscovered, when I heard a familiar voice ordering at the counter. Looking up, I saw Zoe. She looked different, tired, and somehow diminished. The confident, polished appearance she had maintained throughout her MBA program had given way to something more frayed around the edges. She spotted me almost immediately. After collecting her drink, she hesitated before approaching my table. "Pat," she said, her voice carrying none of the certainty I remembered. "May I sit down?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me, curious but not anxious about this unexpected encounter. "I heard you went to Japan," she offered after an awkward silence. "I did. It was amazing. That is great. You always wanted to go there." She fidgeted with her cup. "I graduated. Just barely, but I made it through." "Congratulations," I said, meaning it sincerely. Despite everything, I had never wished for her failure. "I had to take out some pretty terrible loans," she continued. "The interest is crushing, and the job market is not what I expected." I nodded, unsure what response she was seeking. "Liam and I broke up," she added. 2 months after graduation, he got a job offer in New York and decided long distance would be too complicated. Said we were at different stages in our careers and lives. The irony was not lost on me. "I am sorry to hear that." She looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "No, you are not, and you should not be. He was terrible for me, and I was terrible to you." She took a deep breath. "I have been doing a lot of thinking. Therapy, actually. Trying to understand why I would throw away something real and supportive for something flashy and ultimately empty." I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. "And any insights, many. None particularly flattering." She smiled sadly. "My therapist thinks I have issues with self-sabotage and valuing external validation over authentic connection. My parents think I am just selfish. They might both be right." We talked for nearly an hour. She shared her struggles finding employment with her expensive new degree, her regrets about how she had handled our relationship, and her tentative steps toward building a more authentic life. I found myself able to listen with compassion, but without being pulled back emotionally. Something fundamental had shifted in me during our months apart. As our conversation wound down, she asked the question I had suspected was coming. "Do you think there is any chance for us to try again? I mean, now that I understand what I threw away." 6 months earlier, I might have considered it. The Pat who had supported her unconditionally for years might have welcomed her back. But that was not who I was anymore. "I wish you well, Zoe. I really do. But no, that chapter of our lives is closed." She nodded disappointment, clear, but not unexpected. "I figured. You seem different. Stronger." "I am," I acknowledged. Turns out, losing someone can sometimes mean finding yourself. As we parted ways, I realized the greatest lesson from this painful experience. My value was never in what I could provide for others, but in what I could build for myself. The financial support I had offered Zoe had come from a place of love, but also from a misguided belief that providing for her was the best way to prove my worth. The man who had calmly said good luck and rebuilt his life was a stronger, more complete version of myself. I had learned that self-respect must always take precedence over comfort or convenience. I had discovered that boundaries are not limitations but foundations. I was now dating someone new, a relationship built on mutual respect and equal contribution both financially and emotionally. We were taking things slowly, each bringing our own established lives to the relationship rather than one supporting the other. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between maintaining your dignity and keeping the peace? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find this video. Subscribe for more real stories about finding strength in unexpected places, and share with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes walking away is the most powerful step forward. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by what you give but by what you refuse to give up.